Thank you for the invitation. I'll talk about media architecture, making the invisible visible. I was asked earlier if I'm a magician, relating to the subtitle. I'm afraid I'm not. I'm an architect and trained as interactive designer, so making invisible visible, I'll explain that later, but no magic, I promise. I represent the Danish architect design office Collision, and we've been there for 11 years, and somehow and somewhere along that way, we were caught in a traffic jam at the intersection of architecture, interaction design, strategic communication, participatory processes, and academic research. I have to say, no one got harmed so far in that jam, and actually we like it there. So that's our field, what we work with. We seek a curious approach, which is research-oriented, so we have different relations to research projects at the universities in Denmark, and like it that way, are driven by it. And to make it the simplest equation of our work would be to have a human-oriented perspective on space and technology. But I've been asked to talk about media architecture, so what is that all about? It can be a lot of things. It can take up multiple shapes. You can find it in different situations. And it definitely got to do with a lot of different aspects from our daily life, and one could take a look at some of them. Of course, it relates to architecture itself. It's got to do with communication. It could have something to do with, let's say, a public service, advertising, branding, etc., but also aspects of art, maybe news, or playful interaction, and I'll show you examples of that. Our perspective lately on media architecture has been enhanced brand ambience, and that can be explained when light and media is or are integrated in the architecture, and the background images of that quote is a picture taken from the Danish pavilion at the Expo 2010 by big architects, and where I, together with Kavi, a center at the University of Aarhus, and Martin Professional, did the total lighting installation, which was a dynamic set of light. It could also have to do with when the media and light is in dialogue with the surrounding, and relevant for the context of today. We see here a picture of TEDx in Hamburg, where we did an installation, again with Martin Professional and another architect, and in dialogue with TEDx/Red Onion, which, as you see here, as panels above the speaker's head that illustrated the communication on Twitter. So it continuously scanned Twitter's exactly communication and represented that communication in relation to the specific event. It could also have to do with when light and media is supporting a brand, referring to organizations or a company. I won't go into detail with that. Or finally, when having an experience-oriented and aesthetic dimension to it. But okay, that's a lot of words. It's better to get examples of what it could be, and I will definitely show you later. But maybe first of all, I should explain the subtitle, the magic part. Make what visible? And the way I'll introduce it, at least, is by explaining or giving some thoughts about how we've been working lately on projects dealing with energy consumption, or how to produce power or supply power to cities, CO2 emissions, and climate changes. I mean, big subjects relevant for all of us, but at the same time so abstract and hard to grasp that we had to look into new ways and strategies to dealing with it. So just some examples of new ways of interfacing towards energy consumption. We have been working with more playful interfaces for creating experience-oriented exhibition setups for explaining power consumption, gaming situations for citizens and municipalities where they could meet and discuss the challenges, and not at least 3D interactive setups where you could get understanding of what happened if the water rises so and so many meters. So I guess, and as explained in depth by some of the previous speakers, it's easy to see that there is this big issue or need for communication, but it's also at the same time really hard to discuss these things. And especially within the field of energy consumption, CO2 emission, and climate changes, that's really a hard job to do. And referring to some reports well back to 2008, at least the Danish population, 38% of them could not or did not see or relate the CO2 emission to the climate changes. So, and I mean, so we had some challenges here. And as said before from other speakers, most people do not know much about their actual consumption power or whatever it could be, and the related effects to the environment or surroundings. So something has to be done. And I mean, in the perspective of being as simple as it is, things that we do not understand is of no value of us, or might even be frightening. So our job has been to, through the projects that I'll come to in a second, to create or interpret, make the invisible, yes, exactly visible, or the abstract, tangible, or easier to understand, and not at least transfer boring situations, which it is to many people to discuss climate changes, energy consumptions, etc. It can be boring if not done in the right way, to create a more interesting and playful attitude to it. So to frame these parameters and wishes, we have been working with a strategic process model called ELIA that stands for Attention, Experience, Learning, Influence and Action, which is like the steps that we see that is important to like create or have a look at, take care of when communicating, not at least in urban space, which are the examples that I will come to. Whereas they will only take care of the three first ones. But if you travel with me to a public setup, and more specifically Copenhagen, then we have lined up more or less the ingredients, like really abstract, demanding issues like climate changes, energy consumptions, etc., and a public space which is like the city arena for all of us, like where we all move daily. And here we find our latest project, The World's Cities Will Grow Green, where we take use of, let's say, size and surprise, and that's where I return to the media architecture thing. And I would like a movie up here. Thank you. So imagine being in Copenhagen, and this for sure has to be seen live. So it's a poor representation, though it's a nice big movie here behind me. But we are in the main town hall in Copenhagen, looking towards the city hall's 1,500 square meters facade, which is enlightened with projectors. And by doing so, we can create a communicative facade on the town hall itself. And by doing this, we of course communicate with the citizens and hopefully in eye height with them. That's at least what we seek to do. And what we have here is what is happening here is that we like set the scene and with surprising effects, try to illustrate that something new is going on and catch people's attention and hopefully give them an interesting experience for them to at all use some time to look at it. And what is going on in the top of this communicative thing is small statements related to the subject that I just mentioned, climate changes, energy consumptions, etc., and related to parallel activities within some ongoing conferences in Copenhagen by green growth leaders from around the world, and having them transferred into eye-height communication to the citizens, making it possible for families that just were bypassers communicate about these things, hopefully bringing them home to the dinner and keep on discussing them. If that was the case, then our job would have been a success. Yeah. I would like to go back to the slides. Thank you. My next project, which is like giving hopefully an idea of how we think of working with these aspects, is the Climate Wall, a project I did with CAVI, a center at the University at Aarhus, which was in relation to, again, a large climate exhibition from the municipality of Aarhus, who were trying to convincing the very city about that we should, or the city should go into a more CO2 efficient mode, and knowing that it could be a challenge to get people's attention on the street, we then seek to work with, we could call it a social design, and definitely playful interactions within this project. And it has to be seen as a movie again, which communicated way better. So the context is more or less the same as in Copenhagen. We are in a public space in Aarhus, which is the second largest town of Denmark. And the situation is like this, at least in Denmark, that when you walk on the street, then normally your nose would be pointing down. So it's not, normal to say hello to strangers or talk to anyone on the street unless you know them really good or meet a friend. I guess that's how it is in most of Europe. But we would like to create an experience that dealt with exactly that. So what you see here is that it like rains with words in relation to the exhibition on the other side of that wall, so to speak, or that relates to climate changes. And when stopping up in front of a word, a bubble appears around it, and the word grows, and slowly the bubble, or the speech bubble, rises up into the sentence which is created of all those words. And that plays with the idea of magnetic poetry that you can do on your refrigerator by combining words. But whereas you are alone in front, often at least, in front of your refrigerator, this happens in public space, so you have to agree with the man or woman next to you what to write. So you have to get into some dialogue with the people on the street to control the message or to play with it together. And that has been interesting aspects for us to work with. So here I want to show you a last example, which is broadening up the field a bit, at least the perspective on the domain, energy, that relates more to activities within a situation, the lived life, so to speak. And it's a large-scale installation, again referring to media architecture, that we did with our good collaborators, Martin Professional, at their headquarters, taking advantage of some of their products, where we wanted to create a communicative piece that were dealing with weaving the inside activities and the outside activities together in one and the same expression. And doing so, we had to develop some further interaction possibilities, among them mobile technologies and some integrated sensors in the building. And let's have a look at that one. So I'll bring you to, it's Aarhus again. And here we look at the building where we find this 180 square meter LED surface integrated in the building. And one of the first things to look at here is the iPad functionality that was developed where, just like having the climate wall, you could play with words, then you could combine words in different ways on the iPad, on the small screen, so to say, and then send it, distribute it towards the large screen and share it with the people around you. Other aspects of the design is more related to an organic or abstract, simply interpretation of the architecture. We're having patterns rolling over the screen itself or representing digital shadows coming from the exact building itself. But as promised, we also had some sensors built in, so when a person enters the building, a pulse of distortion is distributed throughout the very building and communicates in a subtle, well, subtle, it's huge and big and it lights up the very thing, but in a subtle way it tells the story about the actions and the human behavior within the building. At the same time, we have sensors looking towards the street that takes care of telling the system about when a vehicle passes or if a person acts in front of the building, and the facade responds to that as well. As a final thing, I would like to illustrate with the movie here is what we call the mosaic, which plays with the idea of social media integrated in the facade. So coming from the photo booth setup you saw before, we have now developed a fully integration with the iPad, so you can take your picture and have it sent to the screen as a part of a digital guest book setup. So I hope by running through these projects, it gives you an idea of how we think of the potential of weaving the inside and the outside of buildings together and use the facades, not at least in public domains, as communicative pieces that could be potential communicators for subjects like energy consumption, climate changes, etc. So before leaving you here, just get even more speculative, or I will get speculative by just showing some examples of what we're working with here and now, and where it might end up. I won't go into detail, we'll explain, but simply just leave the images behind me standing here as examples of coming from the architecture or media architecture, which is truly, or can be truly visually engaging, to something that plays with all senses and appeals to a more engaging way of dealing with space itself. So we are looking forward to realize that and tell that story next time, maybe. Thank you.